Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, and I'm joined by a lineup of baseball visionaries in the gambling space. We got Sean Zerillo, Collin, Whitchurch, and then Grant Neiffer is going to have his dinger card here on Tuesday in the Bigs. But let's start with this, guys. We've talked a lot about the bookends of baseball. We've talked about the World Series contenders. We've spilled some ink in terms of the Action Network app and also on this podcast discussing how low can the Rockies go. Well, they just won last night, so don't let them get hot, Major League Baseball. But let's go in the middle instead, finally, for a question. Name for me a sub 500 team as of today that you believe will make the playoffs. And there's really some intriguing candidates in this list. You got the Rangers, the Red Sox, the Braves, the Reds, the Diamondbacks. All of them have the potential to get hot, to reel off some wins, get on the right side of 500, and then all of a sudden find themselves in the wild card mix. I'll start with you, Collin. Of those teams, or you could go off the board as well, do any jump out to you as teams that are going to get things right as we move into the summer months?
Several of them jump out to me. Actually, if we're being totally honest, I could see 4 of the 5 teams you named being potential playoff teams. The Reds are the team I believe in the least. I think, just relative to their division. The Red Sox, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and actually going to talk about it on Friday with Jim Turvey in our futures episode. The Red Sox are 6-16 in one-run games. That's kind of what I look at in terms of underachievers for teams that could potentially turn it around. Obviously, Boston's in a really tough division too, but the Diamondbacks, I still think the Diamondbacks are the second best team in the NL West. We talked about the Padres and potential sell spots for them last week. The Giants, I'm not a believer in their offense. I think the Diamondbacks could sneak into that wild card spot. And the Rangers are in a very winnable division. I'm not if I were kind of ranking these, the 5 teams you mentioned, by most likely to make the playoffs to least likely, I think I would probably go Boston or Atlanta, Boston, Arizona are kind of in a tier there by themselves as likely, and then the Rangers and Reds I believe in a little bit less. But we're still early enough that these teams that are just kind of slightly below 500 definitely have a chance, especially if they can fix some things, get healthy, what have you. I was really high on the Rangers entering the season, less high on them right now. Their pitching has not performed like I thought. They've had injury issues. Corey Seager hasn't been there, which is kind of expected. Adolis Garcia has completely fallen off the map. But I talked about buying Atlanta about a month ago after their horrid start. Obviously, one of the issues is that the National League is going to be a lot tougher to make the playoffs in than the American League, which is why I think Boston is probably my pick if I had to pick one of these teams. But Boston, Atlanta, Arizona, they're all teams that I'm looking to buy on here as teams that struggled early on, but I think can turn it around.
Are you going to zag where Collin's zigging here, Sean, or is there a team outside of those 5 that you think have a potential to make a run and get into that wild card position?
Yeah, Atlanta at plus 125 right now seems like a pretty strong bet to end up coming back and making the playoffs, especially considering the Corbin Burnes injury the other day. I was obviously very high on Arizona coming into the year, but they've had a number of pitching injuries now. And if Burnes is going to be cooked for the rest of the year, I think Zach Gallen is potentially taken a step back relative to previous seasons. So, yeah, Arizona is in real trouble. They really haven't had much injury luck. Now, that's not to say that I'm super high on the Padres or the Giants ahead of them. I do think the Braves, Mets, Phillies ultimately are all there in the end. Maybe the Braves are in a similar spot to last year where it's coming down to the final days of the season, them and the Mets playing each other in that series at the end of last year. So I think Atlanta is going to be, cutting it close to the finish line in terms of getting to the requisite 90 wins or whatever they need to get in. But I do think that Arizona injury certainly helps lift them up a little bit. NL Central, I think the Reds are going to continue to play around 500, so I don't really see them getting into wildcard position. In the AL, though, looking back at the Texas Rangers, who are a team who we were very high, obviously, coming into the year. Obviously, they have underachieved to this point. Their starting pitching has been phenomenal, though, and Jacob deGrom has actually stayed healthy. If you told me Jacob deGrom was fully healthy on June 3rd, what would the Rangers' record be? I would not have told you 29-31. Now, if Jacob deGrom is going to pitch a fully healthy season, what do you think the Rangers' record would be? I would not say 79-81, probably, right? So I would imagine the Rangers will play better the rest of the year. They're only 4 games out of a wild card spot. The really funny one to think about, and I saw a tweet about this the other day, is the Baltimore Orioles.
I
We're
knew
only
you were going to
9
say
games
that.
out.
I'm with you.
Baltimore's only 9 games out of a wild card spot right now. I believe they just got Kowser back right yesterday off the IL. I'm not sure what Jordan Westberg's status is, but this offense should click at some point this season. I don't think they're going to slump through the entire season. The pitching is obviously miserable, and I don't know what they're going to get on that front. But in terms of a team who is going to outplay their current record the rest of the way, yeah, the Orioles aren't going to play to a 380 win percentage the rest of the way. In fact, I would bet it's likelier than not that they play to a 55% win rate as opposed to a 38% win rate the rest of the way. So, yeah, Texas, Baltimore, and I'd say Atlanta, all teams that were projected to be strong coming into the year, I expect all of them to play fine the rest of the way, given what is currently on their rosters or expected to come back. Arizona, despite me being so high on them at the beginning of the year, I do think the injuries have really caught up with them.
Yeah, the Rangers, it's the thing that's concerns me about the Rangers is that all of these pitchers have performed this well and they are still struggling. And their bullpen is a disaster as good as the pitching has been. Eovaldi and Molly have pitched like freaking insane and they're still a below 500 team. And it's like, we should expect some regression from Molly. Eovaldi's on the IL now, I believe. And then will we get the ultimate Jacob deGrom injury? That's the big question. I should have mentioned the Burns injury when I talked about the Diamondbacks. I still I like the Diamondbacks' depth. I like their offense more than a lot of teams in the National League, where I think they could potentially withstand a Burns injury. Gallen's performance in general is going to be kind of what decides that, because he was supposed to be the co-ace there with Burns and hasn't been. I bet the Braves to win the NL East a month ago. I don't remember the price I got, but it was still pretty appealing. I bet the Orioles to make the playoffs a few weeks ago at I think like 12-1 or something like that. I don't know what it's at right now, but completely in lockstep with you. If their offense figures it out, their pitching is bad, but like it's basically was performing at like its 10th percentile projection in the first 2 months of the season. And if they're even closer to like their 50th percentile outcome for some of these guys, then that's enough to like stay in it. Whether they buy at the deadline is a question as well, but like they've got enough offense for sure. It's just a matter of the pitching.
And if you're going to invest in the Braves at this point, I think just go ahead and take NL futures or World Series futures.
Yeah.
NL is 15-1, World Series probably about 25-1 or higher. So if Atlanta gets in, they I think are the biggest threat to the to the Dodgers, and the other top teams come playoff time. Obviously, it would still be the Dodgers at this point, but Tyler Glasnow injury news like pretty concerning yesterday. I don't really know what the Dodgers are going to look like compared to last year come playoff time. Muncy's been hitting much better of late. He had I think he had LASIK eye surgery or something, so Muncy's performing better of late. Edwin Diaz for the Mets. I should throw this out there because I saw this online the other day. A few weeks ago, one of the trainers noticed that Edwin Diaz, he had one leg that was longer than the other. I had this issue too when I was a kid from playing hockey, from like being a goalie, dropping down constantly. My hips got slightly out of alignment. I had a lot of lower back pain because one leg just gets like slightly longer than the other. They fixed Edwin Diaz's legs, or the leg length, like 3 weeks ago. Since then, he hadn't given up a run until last night. So I think Edwin Diaz, like back fully optimized. Max Muncy getting LASIK eye surgery, has been crushing the ball since then. It's funny that these like little adjustments that guys are making in season, like medical adjustments that are improving performance. But yeah, I think the Braves are the most dangerous team on paper. And Acuna, most importantly, Acuna looks phenomenal, right? That's like, if you're going to invest in the Braves, you wanted to make sure that Ronald Acuna Jr. was healthy. He looks way better than he did the first ACL surgery, the year after the first ACL surgery. It looks back to full health. So yeah, I think Atlanta, a worthy investment at this point. If you don't have preseason futures, or even if you do.
I just looked this up, guys. In terms of an exacta, the Orioles getting the 6th seed in the AL. I'll put it to you. What number would you need to get on board with a bet like that for them to grab the 6th seed? I'll go to you first, Collin.
Well, I bet them at 12-1 a few weeks ago, so I would say probably around there.
Sean?
Well, they're 18-1 to make the playoffs, so I would probably say to be exactly the 6th seed, probably 20-1.
47-1 at a major book out there. So go ahead and shop around, fans, because you can get an opportunity to grab really one that could right the wrongs of your entire betting season if you go ahead and hit that. So
Yeah,
I
I
like.
mean, like, are they getting the 5th seed or the 4th seed? Right? If they're getting in, they're probably getting the 6th seed, right? So, like,
You would
what's the
think.
difference between their playoff odds at 18-1 and that bet at 45-1? It seems like that might be the better bet. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to have to delay some elective surgeries, to fix my lower back, to give my UCL a little, extra juice. We're just going to go right to best bets here instead. We're going to start with Sean. He likes the Yankees against the Guardians, and a rare play where you're laying big juice, the Yankees minus 185. Tanner Bybee's been getting knocked around at 2 of his last 3 starts. His off-speed and breaking stuff has fallen off a cliff. It's not getting it done at all. He actually has one of the lowest chase rates of any pitchers in the bigs with a sub-4 ERA. So you can make the argument that, under the hood, he is due to kind of have a blow up, moving forward. As I mentioned, his sub-4 ERA probably doesn't align with the stuff that he's putting out there on a nightly basis. On the Yankee side of this matchup, Rodon has been masterful, a sub-1 whip, double-digit Ks in 2 of his last 4 outings. So you don't mind laying the big number here, Sean?
Yeah, I make this about minus 220. So anything minus 200 or better on the Yankees is fine with me. If you want to parlay it, I would take it up to about minus 210. Don't have another desired parlay piece I would put it with, but maybe there's something else that you can find on the board that you might like. Now, Carlos Rodon looks the best that he's looked since the 2021 and 2022 seasons. Collin with some familiarity back to those days when he was pitching for the White Sox before he moved on to San Francisco. The strikeout minus walk rate, not quite at that level. It was about 27, 28% over those 2 seasons, but he is back around 22, 23%, where the past couple of years, he was closer to 17, 18%. The expected ERA, though, is back below 3, and the Yankees made some modifications to him this year. This is their 3rd year with Rodon in the rotation. He had injury issues the first year, pitched a full season last year, but wasn't as effective as they hoped he would be. Well, they gave him a sinker this year, and it grades out as a plus offering, 104 stuff plus, and he's mostly throwing it to lefties, about 23% of the time versus lefties, 4% versus righties. But what it has done, obviously given him another effective pitch, but also increased his ground ball rate. His ground ball rate is up about 8% year over year, which has also decreased his home run rate, which is below 1 per 9. And the Yankees and the Guardians have played each other quite a bit. I think they've played in the playoffs two consecutive years, 2 of the past 3 years, maybe even 3 consecutive years. The big difference between these teams is always the power discrepancy. And when we get to October, we always note the teams who win the home run battle win the game like 80% of the time or whatever it is. And the power discrepancy between these 2 teams is very difficult for the Guardians to overcome. It's first versus 19th in terms of WRC plus, but in terms of slugging, it's 2nd versus 22nd, 1st versus 15th in terms of isolated power. So where do the Guardians get the homers from to outpower the Yankees? Never mind the fact that Rodon is much likelier to suppress home runs than Tanner Bybee, who's giving up 1.7 per 9 innings this year. His fastball is down, stuff plus on it down from 92 to 86, and the pitch is getting absolutely torched. The 325 expected batting average, 580 expected slugging percentage. It's closer to 460, 283 and 460 last year. So both of those up pretty drastically with the stuff plus going down. So I think it's a good matchup for the Yankees offense. Any matchup is a good matchup for the Yankees offense. It's the number 1 offense in baseball. They are a little bit better against lefties than righties. The one note I'll have here, though, which could make it a sweat in the late innings, Luke Weaver went on the IL yesterday for the Yankees. He's going to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks with a hamstring injury. But Devin Williams has been pitching much better of late. 13 of his past 15 outings have been scoreless. He was really rough at the start of the season. In May, strikeout minus walk rate north of 30%. So I think Devin Williams has been back over the past month. Just Luke Weaver had kind of solidified himself in the 9th inning. But I do think the Yankees, off of an off day, have enough of a bullpen tonight to get through it against the Guardians. Just that is the part of the matchup that concerns me. Once we get to the bullpens, the Guardians probably have a slight pitching advantage. But in terms of Rodon over the first 5 and the Yankees offense over all 9 innings, they have a pretty significant advantage. So Yankees up to minus 200. First 5 about the same price target, also minus 200. And hopefully we cash a big, juicy favorite in the Bronx tonight.
Real quick on Bybee, I think it's interesting, Sean. I'm in lockstep with you on this. This is his 2nd matchup with the Yankees this year. He threw a quality start the first time out, but you mentioned his lack of missing bats. He had 3 swinging strikes and 106 pitches against the Yankees last time out. The thing that I'm interested in that I'll be watching, especially as someone with Tanner Bybee Dynasty baseball stock, is if he's missing more bats today, because he has been missing more bats in his most recent starts. 2 starts ago, he had 15 whiffs against the Tigers through 7 shutout innings. He had 10 against the Reds a couple starts ago, 9 against the Dodgers last start. Nothing too impressive. But he's been missing a little bit more bats as the season's gone on. I wonder if the stuff has been improving, if maybe he was working through something early in the season. That'll be something to watch for, just looking at Bybee long term. But for today, I mean, just the matchup with the Yankees in general seems bad based on what we've seen from him so far.
All right, we turn now to your first best bets of the episode, Collin. You got Red Sox first 5 against the Angels at home, -115. We faded Bayo earlier in the season, on this program, but he's been pretty great in 5 of his last 6 outings, and we know that he's probably going to be good for 4 or 5 innings. So if you're going to play him and you have faith in him, playing him in the first 5 makes sense. But talk to me about this Sox lineup against Kikuchi in particular, and what are you seeing and why are you siding with Boston?
Yeah, it's definitely more a bet on the Red Sox offense against Kikuchi than it is on Bayo himself. It's going to be a nice night in Boston. The wind's blowing out about 10 miles an hour over the monster. So I'll trust the bad pitcher who doesn't induce ground balls against the bad pitcher who doesn't. Kikuchi's on a sterling run right now from a run prevention standpoint, at least. In 6 May starts, he allowed just 7 runs in 33 1/3 innings. It was at 1.89 ERA over the month of June. I'm mashing the sell button hard on him. I think this is a good place to start at Fenway on a good night for hitters against an offense that's one of the better in baseball against southpaws. The Red Sox are relatively neutral split-wise, just overall generally, but they do grade out about 4% better against left-handed pitching. Kikuchi is inducing ground balls at a career worst rate right now, which is totally fine when you're pitching in Anaheim, some of the more pitcher-friendly parks that he's pitched in during this run, but it probably isn't going to work at Fenway on a night like tonight. Bayo, you mentioned decent run here from a run prevention standpoint, but it's been incredibly smoke and mirrors. He has a 3.83 ERA. His expected indicators are all more than a run worse. 29 strikeouts against 22 walks this year is dreadful. And he hasn't gotten through 5 innings in any of his last 6 starts. The entire month of May, he couldn't get through 5 innings. And the stuff has looked worse across the board. I think Sean has talked about this in previous episodes. If you look at his metrics, you look at the Stuff Plus, Pitching Plus. If you look at Stuff Pro, which is Baseball Prospectus' version of Stuff Plus, basically, it's all worse than last year. I'm interested to see what Bayo looks like going forward. I think he's shown a little bit of signs of progress in recent starts, especially from the strikeout and walk perspective. He had a delayed start to the year. He suffered a shoulder strain in training camp, spring training. He didn't make his debut till the end of April, didn't have a traditional spring training, and I'm willing to wait and see before I write him off entirely. Things haven't looked good, but I'm not fully out on Bayo yet. Kikuchi's the better pitcher on paper right now. There's no doubt about that. But the Red Sox offense is significantly better than the Angels offense, and I trust Boston to hit Kikuchi more than I trust the Angels to hit Bayo, no matter his faults. I see Sean shaking his head here. I'm going to be interested to see his counter here. I'm on Boston first 5 innings here specifically. I wouldn't fault you for betting the full game. I think that Boston might get a little more length from Bayo today after Boston had to dip into its bullpen early last night after Dick Fitz couldn't get out of the first inning. But Red Sox first 5 -115. I really like that tonight.
If you want, Sean, you can transition right into you liking the Angels here as your favorite underdog. You also think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, I don't see how the Red Sox offense is better than the Angels offense. I completely disagree with that point. I am not fully out on Bayo as of yet, just because he's starting to mix in a cutter. It hasn't graded out well. Cutters, changeups don't really grade out that well in terms of Stuff Plus overall, but he's thrown it 11% of the time his past 2 starts, 76 Stuff Plus on it. I think he's just looking for something else to be effective besides his sinker, because the sinker's good and he's continuing to get ground balls, but the strikeout rate way down, walk rate way up. He's kind of like Andre Palante right now in terms of like the strikeout minus walk rate, 8%, 12% career. The ground balls, though, are going to save him. But yeah, I don't see the Red Sox offense as being better than the Angels offense, particularly when they're facing a left-handed starter. I only see 3 or 4 above average bats against lefty pitchers in here. Devers, Refsnyder, Campbell, and then maybe if you want to upgrade Narvaez relative to his preseason projections. But by Steamer preseason splits, it's only Devers, Refsnyder, and Campbell. With Bregman out of the lineup, Red Sox have dropped to 19th in terms of WRC+. The Angels lineup has at least 6 above average bats against right-handed pitching. They did lose Moncada to the IL yesterday. He was one of the guys who projected below 100, but Nito, Shanuel, I always say Nito. It's Neto. I always want to say Zachary Nito. I don't know why. I guess Nito just sounds cooler than Neto.
It sounds Nito.
Yeah, like Nito. Oh, that's Nito. Like, yeah, it just sounds better.
We're very
Neto,
close to an around the horn mute situation right now, guys. Let's get this back on track.
Neto, Shanuel, Ward, Soler, Trout, who's been crushing the ball since he came back from the IL, and then O'Hoppe. I actually do like the Angels offense a lot more than the Red Sox offense, but also it's mostly the fact that the Red Sox offense I do project is worse against left-handed pitching right now than opposed to right-handed pitching. I won't go through all this stuff with Bayo because Collin did mention a lot of it, but Stuff Plus down 11 points in a 2-year span from 102 to 91, was 97 last year. Combine that with the injury, I do like runs in this game because Kikuchi has not been spectacular this year. He really has struggled with the new strike zone. I think he's always been a guy who nibbles in the shadow zone, and he's just not getting the calls this year. And also hitters know he's probably not going to put the ball in the zone. So, hey, I could spit at that slider a little bit more. But yeah, I make this total about 9.9. So the over 9.5 to minus 105. But I do show value on the Angels, both first 5 and full game. I make them about minus 105 for the first 5 innings. And then I make the Red Sox about plus 102. Or I make the Red Sox minus 102 for the full game. So Angels plus 110 full game, plus 105 for the first 5 innings is where I would bet those both down to. And then the over 9.5 to minus 105. I should have played the over yesterday. That was basically free money. Had the Angels money line and then had to absolutely sweat that thing in the 5th inning once Tyler Anderson decided to implode things. But yeah, I think we should get more runs here. Seems like decent hitting weather, 72 degrees at first pitch. It was 67 yesterday. So a little bit warmer, wind blowing out, not that strong, but good hitting weather in Boston.
I got to say, it's terrifying going head to head with Sean in a bet. It doesn't happen often enough on this podcast. I feel like in general, a lot of times it's, we got our little planning document here. I didn't even see that he was on Angels for his underdog. And I'm glad I didn't see because it might've messed with the way I think, full disclosure, just being completely honest here. Sometimes you see Sean on something and you're like, oh, maybe I need to look at this a little closer. I didn't. I'm going to stick to my guns here. I like the Red Sox. We'll see what happens.
But we both seemingly like each offense.
We like runs. Yeah, is
I
definitely
tend to agree on the runs.
Absolutely.
Yep. A head-to-head matchup here on Payoff Pitch. One could say Nito. That's pretty cool. All right, Blue Jays plus 135 against the Phillies, going a little bit spicier for your other underdog play, fading Chris Sanchez. Let's look at this. Bowden Francis. I know we've lobbed a lot of dirt on this guy. He recovered, though, from a really rocky April, and he's been cutting down on fly balls recently, which I think is the biggest plus that you can point to, because with the reduction of fly balls, it's allowed him to get his home run problem in check. Now, Sanchez, on the other side of things, he's had a little bit of issue with control. You look at him issuing 3 or more walks in 4 of his last 6 starts. If the Jays can stay patient in this matchup at the dish, you like them, particularly at this price point.
Yeah, the Jays have the better offense. They have the better bullpen, and they're better defensively. Like, the Phillies have the better starting pitcher. The Jays are better everywhere else. And I think that speaks to, hey, are the Toronto Blue Jays going to make the playoffs? I feel like one of the Rays or the Jays are going to keep playing well and end up getting in. And, looking at the Jays roster, the names on it, Addison Barger, Nathan Lucas, you're like, I said this at the start of the year. You're like, who are these guys? I follow baseball very closely. Collin follows baseball very closely. Looking at the Jays' projected starting lineup before the year, I'm betting their over win total. And I'm like, I don't know who half the guys in this lineup are. Lucas takes really good at bats, though. He's very patient. He gets to a 3-2 count in like every at bat. He's really enjoyable to watch. But they grind you down, offensively and defensively. They're really strong. And the Phillies have been awful defensively. And I think that's the biggest differential between these two teams in this game. Toronto 4th, Phillies 28th in defensive runs saved, 6th versus 26th in outs above average. So Toronto should generate more free outs for their pitcher. As you mentioned, Mike, Bowden Francis much better in May than he was in March and April. In fact, his May stats are very comparable to what he did last year. 417 expected FIP, 16% strikeout minus walk rate. That's an above average major league pitcher. Now, Chris Sanchez is a guy I'm super high on. I find myself betting against him in every start now because I think the market is extremely high on him as well. But once this game gets to the bullpens, Toronto has the better bullpen, in my opinion. Second versus 13th in expected FIP, first versus 10th in strikeout minus walk rate. And since the Phillies lost Jose Alvarado, they've dropped to 16th in expected FIP and 19th in strikeout minus walk rate. They don't have that high leverage lefty to come in and get the big outs. Not that they necessarily need it against Toronto. I should mention, though, Toronto, better offense on the season, right? They're in their better split here, too. And the Phillies are in their lesser split. Toronto's 5th against lefties. The Phillies are 9th against righties. 14th against righties. They're 9th against lefties. So Toronto in the better split, with the better defense, with the better bullpen. What should you make the line considering Sanchez is the better starting pitcher? I made it about plus 110. So Toronto plus 120 or better. My favorite underdog on the board today. Definitely my favorite underdog, even compared to the Angels. I prefer, over, etc. in the Angels game as well. But Toronto, I really think, may even be my favorite bet on the board today, especially considering the Yankees have moved to minus 200. I probably could have gotten Toronto to favorite here. I did some things to adjust it to be a little bit more in line with the market. I could have gotten Toronto to like minus 110 or minus 115 here. I think this is a pretty significant edge on a team who I pointed out has a lot of advantages in this head-to-head matchup. So we're betting them today. I would imagine, based on this market, I'll probably be betting them throughout the series.
And we have the high leverage reliever revenge matchup as well.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Hoffman against Jordan Romano. Just from a narrative standpoint, interesting little back end. Both of them have given their new fan bases much to think about going into this series.
Yeah, Hoffman was awesome earlier in the year, and then he started giving up like 3-run homers to blow saves. Romano was awful earlier in the year, and now has assumed the closer's role with Alvarado going down. So they've had like very opposite seasons too in terms of how they've progressed. But yeah, that's a good shout out by you. I didn't think about the ninth inning dynamics with these guys coming in against their former teams. It's some good drama.
If you're listening in and you raised your eyebrow at fading Sanchez, how about this one from Collin? We're going to fade Paul Skeens here, despite the fact in his last 7 starts, he's given up a grand total of 8 runs. Yet he is 2-3 in that stretch, and the Pirates are 3-4 straight up. On the other side of this matchup with the Astros, who are plus 140 against the Buccos, Lance McCullers is coming off really, I would argue, the worst start of his career, but you can point to his last start in particular, potentially as a turning point. 6 innings, 12 Ks, and a 5-3 win over the A's. When you think about like game flow, what it's going to take to get a win over Skeens, is it just a matter of trying to force him to throw 100, 115 pitches in the 7th or 8th inning, getting into that bullpen and hoping things break late? Or do you think they could just win a game 2-1 and just suppress the bats on the other side of things?
Yeah, it's just a matter of the fact that Paul Skeens has one of the worst teams in baseball playing around him. You mentioned his stretch and them being 3-4 in his last 7 or whatever. They're 5-7 in Skeens starts for the year. Paul Skeens is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's pitching for one of the worst teams in baseball. That's going to afford us opportunities like this, and that's exactly what we're getting today. There are very few circumstances where I think the Astros should be underdogs against the Pirates, and I don't think they should be in this start just because of the starting pitching edge that Paul Skeens has. Lance McCullers Jr., really interesting, coming back from this very long-term injury. Didn't start a game since, before Lance McCullers Jr. came back from injury, his last start was in the playoffs against the White Sox. That tells you how long he's been out for. The White Sox were a playoff team last time Lance McCullers Jr. was healthy. He looked like a fully stretched out and realized version of himself last time out. Like you mentioned, 6 innings, 3 runs, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts. Granted, it was against the slumping Athletics, but today he's facing the Pirates. They're the 3rd worst offense in baseball against right-handed pitching. I think that what Skeens is doing is absolutely absurd. If you look at the difference between the first 5 money line and the full game money line, that tells you the difference in starting pitcher versus the rest of the game. I believe the Astros are plus 115 or plus 140 on the first 5 and plus 115 for the full game or something like that. But I just say don't overthink this. If Skeens holds down the Astros offense, great, so be it. That's what he's expected to do. But I just don't see the Pirates offense scratching together enough runs against Lance McCullers Jr. for it to make a difference. And if it's close, if it's tied, if it's a 1-run game late, I'll give the Astros the edge there, just given their offense and given everything that's wrong with the Pirates. So I love the Astros here as underdogs. I hate betting against Paul Skeens. He's one of my favorite pitchers to watch. Anyone who doesn't enjoy watching Paul Skeens needs to have their head examined. But he's going to present opportunities to bet against him because of the team around him, and this is one of them tonight.
All right, before we get into Grant Neiffer's dingers for Tuesday, we're going to go through the rest of Sean and Collin's card. Sean, you were on the under between the Rockies and the Fish, and stop the presses. The Rockies won yesterday, held on 6-4, winning the first game of the series. Could they potentially win a series? We'll get to that in a moment. But you could make an argument with Tanner Gordon going to the hill here. He could be their best pitcher at this point, and he draws a Marlins lineup that's middle of the road in a lot of metrics, but they don't take many pitchers deep. And that's really been his bugaboo as a starter because he's given up more than a home run per start during his young career. On the other side of things, do we have faith in Sandy avoiding a big blow-up inning here? Because the total is sitting at 8.5, and I can just close my eyes and envision him giving up 4 or 5 in a single inning. So I'm sure that your model is pointing to the value being on under, but just walk me through what exactly you're going to need from Gordon and Sandy in this matchup.
Yeah, the Gordon thing would be news to me, actually, because I had Chase Dollander projected in here. He said yesterday that he was supposed to start today. It seems like he may be starting tomorrow. So I may have to revise my projection on that total. I may end up buying out of that bet because part of it was betting on Chase Dollander on the road. This is a guy we bet on the road a couple times in terms of his unders. Very small sample thus far, home road, but this is a top 25 prospect of baseball. And I think the home road splits are pretty indicative of the kind of guy he can be. 19% strikeout minus walk rate on the road, 346 expected FIP. At Coors Field, 5.8 expected FIP, 4.5% strikeout minus walk rate. So a well above league average pitcher on the road, well below at home. So I do want to make sure Dollander is actually the guy going today. I did bet the under 8.5 here. I liked it down to 8 at even money. Now, even though you see Sandy Alcantara with that 8.5 ERA this season, a 5.3 expected ERA, his pitch modeling metrics are starting to show slight improvement, even despite the 4 walks, no strikeouts in his last start. First 8 starts of the year for Sandy, 4.16 body ERA, 92 location plus, 99 pitching plus. His 3 most recent starts, the body ERA down a half a run to 3.6, location plus up from 92 to 98, and the pitching plus up from 99 to 105. So as I regularly discuss, Sandy's stuff has been back since day one of this season. 108 stuff plus versus 110 pre-injury. The command is always first thing to go, last thing to come back after Tommy John surgery. But I think we're starting to see, based on the in-season metrics and the improved command numbers, that his command is starting to come back just a little bit. So despite that very high ERA, the 8.5 ERA, the 5.3 expected ERA, I think Sandy could pitch much closer to a 3.6, 3.5 moving forward from this point. As I said, I projected this at 7.75, assuming it is Dollander on the mound for the Rockies, would take the under 8 to even money. Now, I do want to back up very, very quickly just to talk about McCullers, because this is somebody I was looking into a little bit deeper last night. I just want to mention, talking about Sandy's improving pitch modeling metrics, to also mention Lance McCullers' improving pitch modeling metrics. When he first came back this season, 97 stuff plus, 87 stuff plus, 97. Last 2 starts, 105 and then 115. And the body array has gone down from 545 to 7, 4.5. Last 2 starts, 324. Last start, 282. So I think Lance McCullers is another guy coming off of injury who seems to be pitching himself back into form a little bit. I would not, fade McCullers at this point. I think it looks like he is getting back to full health. And then same with Sandy. I think you either kind of buy on Sandy at this point with the very high ERA or pass. I would not continue to fade him at this point. So got to double check on the Rockies pitcher, but I do lean under certainly in that matchup with Sandy. And any iterations of Sandy suppressing runs or getting outs, I think you can probably find value on that point after how he's pitched to this point of the season.
I do think it's Dollander, by the way. ESPN has Tanner Gordon on their projected starting pitcher for some reason. Fangraphs has Dollander. The Rockies MLB.com beat writer said it's Dollander. Dollander said that it's Dollander. So they've got to make the move. The Rockies need to make the roster move today still. They need to activate him. They need to DFA someone to clear a spot on the 40-man. But I think it's Dollander tonight. So your model should be accurate for that, Sean.
All right, if
Yeah, now
Dollander
I see
says it's
some random
over,
guys saying Dolander's starting tomorrow. So who knows? You know,
Hmm.
who knows? And they have, to be clear, they have Eric Gordon's season as a Rockies fan in their handle. So, you know, is this like a Tanner Gordon like family member
It's
tweeting
his
this out?
brother, yeah. Well, this is why we always encourage our listeners to double check the lines, double check the pitches. This is why you bet listed pitcher sometimes as well.
But Chase Dollander, I mean, literally, as you said he was starting today. So I was like, okay, straight from the horse's mouth, like we're good to go. Don't
And
even
also,
need a
we're
beat
talking about
report
the
here.
Rockies, the most incompetent organization. They could activate him today and start him tomorrow and
Yeah.
just like burn a bullpen arm today for no stupid reason. So until the man takes the mound, assume uncertainty.
all right, we turn now to the Reds versus the red hot Milwaukee Brewers, and the Reds are a short favorite here. We don't give out many aces on this podcast because of cost issues, but it's Hunter Green Day. I guess this question is, when you look through his recent performances, is there a concern with the strikeout dip? He's got 11 Ks in his last 3 outings, but the bigger issue tied to that is he hasn't gone deep 6 innings or more than 6 innings in his last 6 starts. So is there something to be concerned about in terms of his endurance, in terms of how they're using him? And if so, does that shift your play to a first 5 as opposed to a full game?
Yeah, he had that groin strain that he went on the IL for a few weeks with. I don't know how it's feeling, obviously, coming off of the IL, but as you said, 4 innings, 5 innings, his past 2 starts. Was it a matter of him not rehabbing and them wanting to protect the arm, not having him throw too many pitches, or is he feeling groin tightness again? I don't really know, but overall, I do think Hunter Green has outperformed Freddie Peralta this season, even though their ERA is in a very similar range. Peralta 2.7, Green 2.6. The underlying indicators for Hunter Green are significantly better. His expected ERA is nearly a run lower, 3.6 for Peralta, 275 for Green. Strikeout minus one, and the expected FIP similar, 413 versus 324. Body ERA is almost a run and a half better, 395 versus 2.4. Strikeout minus walk rate, 10 points better, 25% versus 14%. And the called strike plus whiff, 30% versus 26%. In fact, for Peralta, strikeout minus walk rate and called strike plus whiff are both at career lows. So despite the fact that he has a sub-3 ERA, under the hood, Freddie Peralta doing some things worse than he's ever done them before in his career. And I think that called strike plus whiff rate combined with the strikeout minus walk rate tells me he is a level below Hunter Green. So I made this line about minus 130. I would bet it up to minus 120. We are assuming Green is fully healthy based upon his season-long stats. I can't really project anything out based upon injury that I don't already have factored in. But the body array, the pitch modeling metrics have been fine in his past 2 starts. The velocity dipped a little bit last time out, but assuming he's fully healthy, I do make Green about a minus 130 favorite here. So Cincinnati minus 120 or better. I think I did see that line get hit this morning, though. So you may have to wait for this one to come back down.
Before we get to your last 2 on your card, Sean, let's get Collin in for a walk prop, which I love. I can never get enough of these. We got George Kirby under a half a walk, so a perfect sheet in that regard at plus 160. And it's pretty simple. There's a lot to like if you look at 2024 numbers. He had 14 starts with 0 walks last season. With that information in hand, and also the fact that his shoulder inflammation is now in check, you think it's time to flash the 2024 version of himself, and you're getting a great number at it.
Yeah, betting the under on George Kirby walks was one of my favorite things to do last year. I think we're getting a bit of a discount on it today because of how he's looked in his first 2 starts back from injury. As you mentioned, 14 starts with 0 walks last year and 33 starts total. 42% of the time he walked 0 batters, implies plus 138. He's walked 1 and 2 batters respectively in his first 2 starts, and he hasn't looked great generally, but today he's facing an Orioles offense that loves to swing the bat. Baltimore has the 5th lowest walk rate against right-handed pitching, the 4th highest strikeout rate. It's actually a good offense. I mean, we talked about the Orioles a little bit and buying on them. They're 7th in weighted runs created plus against right-handed pitching, despite the team's struggles as a whole. But if Kirby is living in the zone, which he does, and the Orioles are going to swing the bat, I see this playing out one of 2 ways. If Kirby's still struggling, it's going to come in the form of a lot of hard contact. If he's back, it's going to come in the form of a lot of whiffs. In neither scenario is he allowing free passes to this walk-averse offense. If you took 2024 at face value and said, okay, it's plus 138, that he doesn't allow a walk, that's one thing. That's obviously not how handicapping works. So when you factor in the offense that he's facing today, the fact that they don't take a lot of free passes, I think plus 160 on him to have under half a walk is really great value. I've seen it plus 155 to plus 160 range at a couple of different books. I think Bet365 has the best number at the moment, and that's what I would take. I really like, we've been on quite a roller coaster over the last couple of weeks in the walk props. We hit a Scooble over half a walk a week or two ago, and I hit a Scooble under half a walk that wasn't given out on the pod, but that was tracked in the Action app. And now we're doing the same thing that we did with Scooble with Kirby. One of the most control-oriented pitchers in baseball, wasn't super control-oriented in his first two starts, and I think he gets back on track tonight.
All right, to finish out Sean's card, this one seems simple, at least to me. You got Mets, Dodgers going over 9, and it's a Kershaw start. His starts this year have resulted in run totals of 20, 12, and 11. All 3 games went over. It's that simple, right?
So he actually pitched okay in his last start against the Mets. 5 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 3 Ks. I think there was like a rain delay in there, and then the game ended up going over after. But even in that start, 92 stuff plus and a 6.12 bot ERA. So Kershaw under the hood looks like an absolute disaster. The Dodgers just need innings from literally anybody. Apparently, our producer David Payne is starting for the Rockies today, based upon our chat in here. So maybe David, after he starts for the Rockies, is going to get DFA'd, and the Dodgers can pick him up and start using him in their rotation because they need just warm bodies at this point. But yeah, Kershaw, previous years, stuff plus 109, 102 last 2 years, down to 92 this season. Location plus 96, 94 past 2 years, down to 90 this season. Weather not particularly, hitter friendly. It's similar to last night, 65 degrees, 7-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. It seemed like every batted ball was getting knocked down yesterday. I don't know if they sent juice balls to Dodger Stadium for the Yankees-Dodgers series, but all 3 games were on national TV. Apple TV Friday, Fox Saturday, ESPN Sunday. All 3 of those games went over. I saw a number of batted balls last night that were squared up that did not go all that far. And, watching the Mets broadcast, the announcers were just stunned that these balls were not flying as far as they expected them to off the bat. We don't have to fully get into this. I've been tracking it. I try not to talk about it publicly so much, but the drag coefficient data on the baseballs is up this year, indicating that the balls are dejuiced, if anything. And home run to fly ball rate has dropped from April to May. The drag coefficient data has increased from April to May. It seems possible that MLB saw this shrunken strike zone and said, oh my God, scoring is going to implode or explode over the summer. We need to introduce some dejuiced baseballs to suppress this. But legitimately, that's what the data tells me based upon the difference in the drag coefficient. So I've been mostly not avoiding overs, but I have suppressed my run scoring environment. I've been leaning more towards unders. I am on an over here. Now, these teams did get pretty deep into their bullpens last night. They ended up going to extra innings because Edwin Diaz blew the save in the 9th. Diaz probably not available tonight. Pitched 3 of the past 4 days. Tanner Scott has gotten blown up his last 2 outings against the Mets. So both teams' top relievers not in the best spot. Huascar Brazaman threw 32 pitches to the Mets. They threw 7 relievers in total. And Jose Castillo, their only lefty, tossed 15 very ineffective pitches as well. So maybe the starters can be effective tonight, but I do not like these bullpens, in these matchups against one another. I feel like there's a lot of familiarity here. I think back to their NLCS. I think the NLCS last year, all 6 games of that series went over. These teams have happened to go under a few times in their matchups so far this season. But I mean, even last night in extra innings, Dodgers had the tying run on second base, in the 10th with no outs and a chance to at least put that game on 9 at minimum and push the over 9. So yeah, I make this total about 9.75. I'd bet the over 9.5 to even money. Do not like Kershaw, but mostly do not like the bullpens or the rest spots for these bullpens against one another.
Kershaw 26 strikeouts away, by the way, from 3,000. I feel like that's like one of those chases that usually you have a big coverage about it, if you'd have said 5 years ago that he was like limping to 3,000, that you would have been, that would have seemed crazy. Like it seemed like he would have gotten to 3,000 like 3 years ago, but obviously the injuries, the COVID year, etc. And now we're looking at, he's going to get there. I'm glad he's going to get there. I was just looking at Zach Greinke the other day, who finished like 30 strikeouts shy of 3,000. Kershaw should get there, knock on wood, health pending. 26 away though. We'll see how many he gets tonight.
Yeah, that's pretty stunning because, like you said, 5 years ago, if you had told me he was going to limp his way to 3,000, it would have been shocking. If you told me this morning just when you told me, I was like stunned that he's close enough to 3,000 to even get there, despite all the injuries he's had, right? It seems like like almost a DeGrom-like thing where it's like started out on a Hall of Fame trajectory, then got completely derailed by injuries. He did pitch a little bit longer and had a little bit more.
He's still a first ballot Hall of Famer, to be clear.
Absolutely. Where DeGrom is going to be debatable in a very unique case.
Late star, weird. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, like that's an interesting like dichotomy of like 5 years ago, I would have been shocked if Kershaw didn't get 300 strikeouts. This morning, I'm shocked that he's close enough to get to 300 or 3,000 strikeouts this year. So yeah, just bizarre.
Let's close out your card. Another over 9.5 between the Twins and the A's. The rare Lopez v. Lopez game with Pablo going off against Jacob. Pablo's been very consistent this year. We know we're going to get between 90 and 100 pitches, 5 or 6 Ks, probably 3 or 4 earned. So can the Twins jump on Jacob Lopez in the first or second inning? Because he's only gone 5+ innings once all season. I have to assume this is going to be a bullpen game for Sacramento. Is that how you're viewing this one?
Yeah, and I think Lopez his past 2 starts were completely different. So he threw 7 innings, 1-run ball against the Phillies. Then he gave up 7 in 2 innings against the Jays. Pitching models hate this guy. There's not a single pitch in his arsenal that grades above 93 in terms of stuff plus. The location is fine. It's league average, but there's not a single thing coming out of his hand that is challenging for hitters to deal with. So I do think he's capable of getting shelled by the Twins. 3.9 expected ERA, but only 2 starts, a bunch of relief appearances. Not a guy I'm looking to bet on. I do project slight value on the A's money line. I was okay betting on Zerillo last night. Jacob Lopez, not really a guy I want to back with my money. But Pablo Lopez, I do think, is a guy who can struggle with the heat and the humidity, as he did in Tampa Bay against the Rays. Career 1.1 homers per 9, but a 40% or a sub 40% fly ball rate this year, or ground ball rate, which is the lowest mark of his career. So he is allowing more balls in the air in a park that we've seen, completely boost homers, doubles, triples, etc. Good hitting weather tonight, 83 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left field, and then also a very good over-up as well in Alfonso Marquez. Marquez career 53% to the over, 2.5% ROI. Just betting the over straight up in every one of his starts, he's worth about a 3% boost to my personal run scoring environment. So I make this about 10.3. I'd make it 10 if it was a neutral umpire in there. I think Marquez gets me closer to 10.3. I'd bet the over 10 up to minus 105. I still feel like the market has not properly adjusted to Sutter Health Park. And especially now that we have the wind blowing out, it's getting a little bit warmer over the summer. They keep putting these totals up at 9.5 and they keep closing at 10 every single day. So you keep giving me 9.5s. I'll probably keep banging the over on them, even with good pitchers in there. Another total I think is just a very simple over here in Sacramento. And hopefully these balls keep flying out of this park, because this over cashed in the 4th or 5th inning yesterday. Like they're cashing early and aggressively. So hopefully we keep that up.
All right, if you've been jumping ahead, waiting for the dinger card here, consider me the third base coach. Stop, giving you the stop sign. We're going to toss it over to Grant Neiffer from Scores and Odds for his home run bets on today's slate.
All right, thanks, guys. It is Dinger Tuesday. That means we get a 50% profit boost over on FanDuel, and I'm using it on a Dinger parlay. 3 legs, 250 to 1 odds. Let's get right into it, starting off with Max Kepler. Now, Kepler hasn't had a ton of bumps so far this season, but the underlying numbers are good. Barrel rate around 12%, good at fly balls, good hard contact. All the numbers are looking good. He should be due for a whole lot more bombs, and he gets a matchup versus Bowden Francis, who's not good. Absolute gas can for lefty power, sitting around 3.5 home runs per 9 this season. Over 2 home runs per 9 against lefties for his career. Absolute gas can. Kepler, get him around plus 500, plus 520 over at FanDuel. way too good of odds. I'm rolling with it. Next up, Kerry Carpenter. I got him around plus 420. Odds have been nuked a little bit, but still some value around plus 350 over on FanDuel. Dude just had 3 dingers yesterday. Gets a matchup versus Smith. Smith has been decent so far, but due for some pretty massive negative regression when it comes to lefty power. Only around a 5% home run to fly ball rate against lefties so far in his short career. Wind crossing shouldn't do too much in this spot, but temps in the low 80s over in Chicago today. Ball should be flying. Carpenter's hot. Even at lower odds, I still love him here. And lastly, Shea Bangelier is plus 430 over at FanDuel. Shea is a fantastic hitter. Tons of pop. Gets a matchup versus Lopez, who grades out as right around an average pitcher for home runs for righties. Over the last few years, he's given up around 1 home run per 9 to righties. But the weather in this beautiful minor league baseball ballpark is fantastic today. Wind blowing out at 10 miles per hour. Temps in the low 80s. Ball should be flying in what's already been one of the best ballparks in the league for power. So Shea getting that short left field porch at plus 430, even in a average matchup, is far too good considering the odds. Parlay all of them together, plus 25,000. That's it. I'm out of here. Happy Dinger Tuesday. Points!
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. If you're looking to tail some of the bets that you heard from Sean, Collin, or Grant, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. A link to sign up there is in the episode description as well. We'll be back on Friday for more best bets. Jim Turvey and Collin will have a futures-focused bonus episode, and then Collin will be hosting the regular show with Derek as well. For Sean Zerillo and Collin Whitchurch, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And of course, best of luck